You wake to the scrape of wood on wood, a low animal groan as two hulls kiss and clamp around your ribs. The boats are freshly dragged from the river. The planks sweat through their grain, cool and damp against your bare flanks, while the morning sun decides to take an interest. You do not see the river now, only a slice of sky bladed by the lip of a plank, and the oval of your own breath rising from your mouth like a fog you can't step out of. Hands have arranged you with practiced cheerfulness, wrists threaded through oval cutouts, ankles posed just so, neck cradled by a ring that smells of pitch and sweat. Someone laughs softly at a joke you are not invited to hear. Then the first fly lands at the corner of your eye as if it were a messenger arriving right on time. You try to buck. The wood answers by not moving at all. The seam at your hip bites back a thin, exact pain that explains the day to you better than words. There is no escape big enough to fit a breath through. You suck in air like a diver who forgot to count, and the air gives you flavors you could name. If naming still mattered, warm pitch, oiled rope, the faint river-sharp tang beneath the sweetness already hanging in the light. A spoon flashes at the edge of vision. The man holding it has the demeanor of a cook, not an executioner. Sleeves rolled, forearms nicked by old kitchen accidents, a little whistle between his teeth that keeps a kindly beat. He smiles at you the way men smile at skittish horses. Then the spoon touches your lips. You clamp your teeth. He waits. You wait. A second man's knuckle presses the hinge of your jaw so gently it is almost a caress. The first spoon is followed by a second, each warm with honeyed milk. It is too thick to drink and too sweet to spit. You gag, cough, swallow because your body cannot agree on a rebellion. The men keep the rhythm, spoon breath, spoon breath. They do not rush you. They are not angry. They are artisans, and you are their instrument, and the song they need today must be played slowly. Above you, a gull sizes the scene with indifferent eyes. Beyond it, the sky is a polished copper lid. The sun has time on its hands. You have time on your body. From the edge of your vision, polished nails shine. The man with the ledger taps a quill against his teeth, counting something you can't see. Not minutes, not heartbeats. Something measured in your reactions, the tightening of your throat, the pulse at your temple, the way your breathing refuses the offered rhythm and then little by little accepts it. A fly returns for a longer visit, investigating the crust of dried sweat at your temple. You learn the language of its feet, a tiny weight that somehow contains a promise. It does not bite. Not yet. It is simply a scout reporting on a new country, rich in sugars and unguarded borders. The men see it too and make no move to shoo it away. One of them tilts a jar and sunlight moves through the liquid like a trapped afternoon honey, thick as a sentence that takes a lifetime to finish. He paints it along your cheeks, your chin, the knuckles. You can see the exposed tops of your feet. He does not slather. He traces. Lines, not puddles, as if he were writing on you. You want to ask how long. Your tongue is a stranger, fat with sweetness. What emerges isn't a word, just the cracked edge of one, and even that seems to amuse the man with the spoon. There he says not to you to the ledger, and his quill scratches another small victory onto the page. The rope at your right wrist creaks as the wood settles around your swelling. You feel your own pulse beating back against the hull, a drum you can't outrun. In the new stillness you notice other sounds. Riverflies knitting the air, the soft slap of current on a piling. A child laughing far off where children are allowed to be ignorant of mornings such as this. When the bowl is empty, the men are not. A cloth appears. A damp edge dabs your lips with absurd courtesy. Another hand, steady as a carpenter's rule, pours a ribbon of water that follows the line of your jaw into your mouth. You drink, because thirst is a master with no politics. The water is river-cool, then tongue-warm, then gone, and the loss is worse than the gift. A finger tests the notch of your collarbone. Someone says, "Good," the way farmers say it to rain. A shade is held over your eyes just long enough to remind you what mercy feels like, then withdrawn to remind you who controls it. The wood breathes. Or perhaps that is you mistaken about the borders between living and not living after only a handful of minutes in this new arrangement. A smear of honey tickles its way toward your ear. You cannot brush it back. You can do nothing but endure the slow geography of liquids on skin. The smell thickens as sun enlarges everything scent can carry. You think of kitchens, of late harvests, of the innocence of sweetness before it learns what company it will be keeping. The first bite arrives not from teeth but from heat, a prickling bloom across your exposed forearms as tiny lives discover a feast they did not expect so early in the day. A murmur passes among the men, not excitement exactly. Confirmation. They have seen the arc begin. Heat will lift scent. Scent will lift wings. Wings will bring hunger. Hunger will bring time. The spoon returns an encore you didn't request, and again your body proves more obedient to survival than to pride. Steady, someone says, and you realize they are not talking to themselves. Somewhere behind your head a mallet taps a peg deeper, a sound with no hurry and no doubt. The seam at your ribs tightens by the width of a breath. You inventory your remaining freedoms and discover they all belong to involuntary systems, eyes that blink, skin that sweats, a throat that swallows. The rest has been loaned to wood and will not be returned soon. When the flies agree among themselves that the feast is safe, the air changes key. You hear it, a brightening chorus you will come to know so well you could hum it. A wing grazes your lip. You flinch, and the men smile, relieved, not by fear but by function. The day is working. You are working. The boats are doing exactly what boats were never meant to do until a clever mind decided otherwise. And in that realization, more than in ropes, more than in wood, you feel the shape of your new world. This is not about ending you. It is about keeping you. The sun moves an inch. The ledger notes it in shadows. Your breath finds a pattern you hate but cannot deny. A sentence begins, written in sugar, sealed in heat, sent on the wings of creatures who have never learned the meaning of mercy. You are the address. The message has only just started. You were not chosen because you were hated. Hatred is noisy and impatient, and this arrangement requires a steadier hand. You were chosen because one night you mistook applause for immunity and told a story that did not belong to you. It was a small story the size of a cup, how a victory really happened, whose blade found the seam beneath armor, whose hand actually turned the hour. You told it with the easy warmth that comes when wine forgives the day. Men laughed, which is the currency of safety. Then one of them did not laugh, and you did not notice the quiet he left behind. The words traveled farther than your feet ever will. They crossed a courtyard on the shoulders of a servant who never forgets a face. They climbed a staircase in the mouth of a steward who owns nothing but proximity. They arrived at a door that opens only to stories that rearrange chairs. In that room where maps are folded and unfolded until borders beg for mercy, your little boast put a crack in something large, the version where the sovereign's hand is every hand, where the prince's glance is every command. You did not mean to say the king was not the king. You only meant to say you were there. But in palaces I was there is a kind of treason if it pulls light away from the center. Committees do not exist in the records, but they gather in the dark like dew. A punishment must be chosen, one that does not merely end you but edits the room. An axe is an ending. It tells the city to go back to its business. A rope is a shape the wind forgets by afternoon. Fire is a quarrel with the gods, and has to be argued for. The boats, though the boats make time. The boats let the story walk from market to barracks, from barracks to household altars, from altars to the thin beds where mothers rehearse warnings into their children's hair. The boats turn your name into a verb. There is theatre here, but not the kind with actors who can miss a line. This theatre runs on repeatable steps, a platform near the river. Rope enough to hum with weight, but not enough to bruise into black before noon. A line of officials who will not be remembered individually, only as a posture. The executioners, your artisans, are chosen for hands, not faces. The man with the ledger has the neatest script in the province. His task is not to record you. It is to record the empire, doing its chores. By mid-morning they begin to arrive. Not the rabble, though the loud ones always find a way to the edges, but the people whose days are small and exacting, the woman who sells onions and never cheats on the weight, the cartwright's apprentice whose future smells like shavings and glue, a priest who believes that purity is a math problem. 2 boys who will tell this to the 3rd boy who had to mind goats today. Children ride on shoulders because memory must be given height. Someone murmurs your name as if trying it on for prophecy. Don't be they will say for a while after this, and the blank will be you. You wonder as the first beads of sweat tick into your hairline if any of them know the exact sentence you spoke that became a rope with a different shape. Perhaps it was only the last straw in a thatch of careless hours. The generals forgive when they need bodies, but the story keepers cannot forgive a story that moves the furniture. You shifted a chair in the room where the ruler sits. That chair must be nailed to the floor again. The nails are made of time. You are the hammer. Once the captain you tried to impress clapped you on the shoulder and called you brother. The word knocked at your ribs like a friend who will let himself in. He is here today somewhere, possibly in uniform, practicing the art of neutral eyes. His orders are to watch the crowd, not you. But he watches you anyway, and learns what loyalty costs at retail price. He will tell this night to himself later, to keep from misunderstanding his own vows. A herald recites the charges because law is a performance long before it is a book. You hear your biography shortened to a paragraph where verbs are knives. The words fit you badly and perfectly at the same time. You try to find yourself in them and fail. Then you try to find the man who told the story, the one you were proud of being, and you cannot quite locate him either. The ledger scratches. The priest's lips count something only he can see. A magistrate nods once, a small weather vane acknowledging wind. What the empire requires from you is not confession, it is duration. A quick death would be generous to the wrong people. It would be generous to those gathered who need to feel the length of consequences in their bones, not only in their minds. It would be generous to rumor, which thrives on gaps and would happily fill an empty afternoon with arguments about your last words. The boats leave no room for rumor. They provide a schedule. So they wrote you into the calendar. This morning is your opening act. By evening, a boy will imitate your flinch to make his sister shriek and then giggle. Tomorrow, a market will haggle an onion down a coin by invoking your foolishness. The day after, a soldier will take a breath before repeating a joke that once began with, "Did you hear how I?" and will end it with a cough instead. In a week, a mother will say your name, and the words go slow in the same sentence to a child who runs too fast near the river. And somewhere in those days a minor official will postpone a boast he does not need to make. The ledger will not record any of that, but the empire will feel it the way a ship feels cargo shift. You think, if I had kept my mouth shut. But the boats are not built for one man's mistake. They are built for the distances inside other men. The theatre requires you, yes, but the audience is the point. You are a mirror. They are learning to see which faces they do not wish to wear. The sun moves another inch. The flies approve. The wood tightens to your breath as if to say, "Here is the role. Hold it." The curtain has already gone up. They built this to last, not the wood, but you inside it. The carpenters came first, men who know how a plank breathes and how a body swells. They chose river oak for stubbornness and poplar for the lid, because poplar forgives movement. They steamed the curves over a brazier and bent the boards until the grain remembered its new religion. You can feel the memory in the way the upper hull sits over your chest, not pressing, only waiting, a patient roof that lowers by the width of your fear. Pitch slicks the seams where light tries to argue its way in. When the breeze moves across the tar, the smell tells you this is shipwright work turned inland boats that will never touch water again except the kind your body provides. They have learned to make a prison that breathes. 3 vents, no more, no less, drilled where a mason's line would cross your navel if the wood were transparent. Each hole is the width of a thumb. Each thumb is different. The executioner's thumbs are the rule of law today. Too large and the dark between hulls will cool too fast. Too small and the dark will become a well. Through those vents, the air trades places with your heat. You hear it, a hush that never reaches wind, a living hush that knows the shape of lungs. One vent sits just where your diaphragm lifts. That is not mercy, it is maintenance. They need your bellows to work. Bolts pass through bronze because iron drinks sweat and rusts too loudly. The heads are countersunk so they won't bruise you into infection before the insects learn their trades. Leather washers, beeswax linen smeared thin with pitch. Each layer a vow against leakage in the wrong direction. They want damp, not drowning, steam, not flood. A carpenter taps a bolt and listens not to sound but to silence. A good hull answers pressure by saying nothing at all. Rope is chosen with as much care as timber. Hemp twists that hold but do not cut a lay tight enough to sing, when pulled slack enough to forgive when your hands swell from what is coming. The knots are simple. The simple ones never fail when sweat and honey turn everything to glass. A loop around each wrist keeps blood where it belongs. They check the color of your fingers every hour. At first, the way herdsmen check the mouths of animals for signs of drought. If the nails go blue, a peg is lifted. The seam eases, a priest takes credit in a whisper meant for himself. You are not being saved. You are being kept. They have tuned this box for slowness, the way musicians tune a room. A reed set in a notch above your left ear channels air, so that your own breath never stales into poison. Someone oiled it with almond, so it will not squeal and frighten you into hyperventilating. A cup-shaped hollow under the lid gives your chest room to rise hand-span wide, 2 fingers deep measured on bodies like yours over years of practice. The wood is not fighting you, it is collaborating with time. Feeding is a tool too. The honey is not kindness, it is calculus. Sweetness draws wings. Milk keeps you from breaking too early. The ratio is learned the hard way. 3 parts goat to 1 part. Hive at dawn, then again at noon, then water that remembers the clay jar it slept in. Too little and you dream of snow you will never see. Too much and your stomach rebels into a flood that ends the show before the first act. They want movement in the dark, between the hulls, your body making its own weather. A man needs your abdomen through the plank as if testing bread. If he feels stone, the mixture changes. He does not look at your face. The ledger needs numbers, not eyes. Shade is a lever. A square of dyed cloth appears when your lips crack into false blue. It disappears when your skin rehearses pink again. The cloth smells of last year's smoke. A boy trained for this duty learns to tune shade, the way a sailor trims a sail, quarter turns, small splits of distance that look like nothing and add up to survival. He doesn't want to scorch you into silence any more than he wants to lull you to sleep. Sleep wastes the audience. Noise is adjusted too. The hammer stops when your pulse begins to race in the notch at your throat. It resumes when the notch learns to be ordinary under extraordinary conditions. The men are listening all the time. Not to your words, those ran out when the first flies arrived, but to the music of your condition. Breaths swallow the small cough that says liquid is thinking about going the wrong way. When that cough comes twice, they tilt you a degree you cannot feel and pretend it was the wind. The dark between the hulls is curated. Strips of linen line 2 ribs under your back, not to cushion you. Cushioning would be mercy, but to wick. They've learned how to keep damp from becoming rot too soon. They sometimes slide a thin reed through a lower vent and stir what the day has given the way a cook stirs a pot so the bottom does not burn. When the reed comes out, the tip smell tells them how far the story has progressed. Vinegar is near the end. Sweetness means there is time. They prefer sweetness. Sweetness sells. A physician comes as a consultant with the quiet arrogance of men who think pulses can be persuaded. He taps, counts, dictates more water at the next hour, less sun after midday, cut the honey thin with broth because the tongue is drying faster than the skin. He avoids your eyes. If he looks, he will see what he is doing, and that would interfere. His oath was written for different rooms. Everything here is for duration, the sockets shaved smooth, so the exposed wrists do not erupt into the kind of infection that ends the play at noon. The ankle hole's oval instead of round, so swelling has a place to flee that is not into your blood. The lid's inner face rubbed with oil to keep the grain from splintering down into 1,000 tiny knives. They have even thought of the sound under you. The boats are set on pebbles instead of earth, so that ants must declare their approach by crackle, and the boy with the shade can brush them back with a twig until the later acts require them. You can taste the intention now, metallic as a coin under your tongue. This is not cruelty in a hurry. This is craft. The men move like monks around a relic. You are a process. They tend you with the reverence of people who believe in outcomes, and the outcome they believe in is not the stopping of your breath, but the long apprenticeship of your pleading. Time is their blade. They have sharpened it well. The spoon becomes a clock. Dawn marks its first shadow, noon its second dusk, its third, each pass of metal across your lip, a tolling that keeps you from slipping into the mercy of collapse. They warm the mixture to blood temperature, so your throat cannot pretend it is foreign. Honey slicks your tongue with a childhood lie. Sweetness means safety, while the goat milk carries the truth in quietly fat for stamina water, for flow salt for the parts of you the heat is stealing. When you try to spit, the man with the ledger sighs, not angry, disappointed the way a tutor is with a clever pupil who insists on failing the easy test, and he waits until your swallow reflex argues you into obedience. The mixture is thick enough to be a decision. Your body keeps making it without asking you. Feeding is a hinge, and they have practiced its swing. A thumb at the hinge of the jaw, not hard, just certain. A palm at the nape to angle the channel. A breath. Length pause between spoonfuls so you don't drown on land. They talk about weather and grain yields over your head, keeping your panic from becoming the room's subject. When the bowl empties, a wet cloth patrols your lips with the same officious tenderness that officials apply to borders. You are tidy again, fit to be seen, fit to be revisited by eyes that want the story, not the mess. The honey they paint is not random. Lines along the brow ridge where sweat beads into beads flies can drink. A crescent around the nostrils so scent rises like a flag. 2 parallel strokes along each forearm to make runways that glisten in the sun and broadcast to a sky fluent in sugar. On your knuckles, rings of gold that are not metal, and across the tops of your feet, anklets a queen would envy if queens envied what comes next. The boy with the shade stands back and squints like a painter judging light. Where the sheen looks thin, the brush returns. Where it pools, he drags it into a thinner invitation. This is calligraphy the insects can read. Inside the box that is not quite a box, the mixture changes its mind the way all milk does when heat makes new promises. It curdles a little then, a little more souring toward an edge that keeps you grimacing. Your stomach, taught by years to accept most humiliations, begins to churn to a rhythm it doesn't own. The honey sticks its fingers into every valve. The milk presses for entry where there was meant to be exit. There is no privacy in this arrangement. The planks listen, the linen wicks, the reed in the vent stirs your weather and judges whether the day is moving too fast. They are not trying to spare you. They are trying to preserve you. The first arrivals of the army are scouts in plain clothes. A fly that thinks with its feet writes dots across your cheek and leaves behind a logic of return. A wasp hangs in place, a needle deciding where to sew. Gnats make a veil that flickers at the corner of your sight until you learn the discipline of staring through them the way men learn to stare through insults they cannot afford to answer. They have no malice. Malice is a human luxury. They have appetite and schedule. You are both. Then the smell changes, and with it, the guest list. Warmth gathers in the dark between planks until air and moisture agree to a collaboration. The men call it keeping. Your body calls it urgency. Your gut squeezes in waves that have nothing to do with volition, and the space that has been engineered for development receives what it was designed to receive. You do not see what the reed sees when it dips and draws a small circle in the humid interior, but you smell its report as the tip is withdrawn. Milk gone to sour, sweet gone to heat, the faint iron of you. The boy with the shade nods to the man with the ledger. A tiny economy functioning without coins. Outside, the sun edits the scene without adding or subtracting a single prop. Heat lifts scent the way rumor lifts names, and the wind does what wind has always done. Spreads invitations you never wrote. Now the flights are regular. Not a stray here and there, but circuits touch, taste, lift, circle, return, drawn to the runways the honey promised. You hold still as a badge, not out of courage, but because there is nowhere left to go inside your own outline. When you flinch, you pay. The seam answers by pressing back into your ribs. The ropes tighten invisibly as swelling translates fear into measurement. By the second feeding, your tongue has become a stubborn animal you must coax down the path. The spoon taps your lower lip with that ridiculous civility they maintain as a point of pride. This is a craft, not a brawl. Your thirst tries to mutiny, demanding water instead of sweetness, so they oblige with a trickle that makes the next spoonful possible. You hate them for giving you exactly what keeps you here. Hate softens into gratitude for a heartbeat when the water is cool, then curdles back into hate when the honey returns. Emotions, too, are part of the recipe, fury enough to keep the mind awake, not enough to waste the breath. You learn the geography of the exposed parts of you, as if they were foreign provinces. The lip corner where the skin is thin, and flies find softness quickly. The eyelid rim where a leg's hair-weak tickle can feel like a needle meant only for you. The web between thumb and forefinger which you never knew was ripe for occupation. The ankle bone where the sun has already carved a red crescent into you, and sugar beads like dew on a battlefield. In each province the same cycle: arrival, testing, brief departure, confident return. You are being mapped. The dark does its own mapping under the lid. What you give the day ferments, what the day gives back steams. The two argue until they agree on a climate. The linen strips wick away just enough to prevent a flood. The vents sip just enough to keep the air from turning into a poison you could blame for ending you too soon. Heat builds, and with it a humidity that whispers promises to all the small lives queued up at your borders. You have never been so wanted. When evening leans over the river, the third feeding feels like a negotiation with a captor who has read your letters. You beg without words, eyes pauses, that useless tilt of chin, and the men, impeccable in their refusal, proceed at the same patient pace. Spoon breath, brush dab, water, then sweetness again. The ledger's quill scratches a small arithmetic intake-output pulse shade. The craft has its numbers. You have only intervals. By the time the last light slips off the honey bands on your forearms, the air around you hums like a hymn you don't want to learn but can't stop hearing. The army is here now, not a charge but a settlement. They pitch no tents, raise no banners. They arrive in singles and couples, each doing the tiny work that becomes a city if you survive the night. You will. That is what all of this has been for. The spoon retires. The brush dries. The boy with the shade sits on his heels and watches the space above your face like a priest reading weather. The trap is fed. The trap is warm. The trap is working. By the third sunrise, the air above you behaves like a marketplace. Arrivals, bargains, departures, returns. The hum has learned your name. It chants it in a single vowel that thickens when the sun climbs and thins when the shade boy trims the light like a tailor saving cloth. Sleep, when it visits, arrives in chips the size of a blink and leaves receipts in your neck. A kink here, a throb there. Proof that even relief takes something when it comes. What changed in the night was not you, but the arithmetic of small lives. Yesterday the insects tested. Today they commit. Where honey traced crescents and rings, you feel a pressure as gentle as punctuation, a wait, a pause, a decision. You do not need to see to understand that decisions become families. Somewhere near the hairline, a pinpoint itch steps up into a fact. Your body shouts quietly in a language older than words: pull, brush, scratch. The wood refuses every verb. You learn to breathe through it the way sailors learn to breathe through storms they cannot outrow. The dark between the hulls has its own calendar. Warmth plus damp plus what you have given to the day equals weather no one will describe aloud. The reed tells the men the forecast. When they dip and stir, resistance, a little heavier scent, a little richer. The sour laced now with something sweetly wrong that means the soup is thickening. They do not gag. They nod. Their faces do the calm arithmetic of people who read ledgers instead of poems. A physician returns, checks the pulse at your ankle where the strap allows a vein to be its small, honest self, and prescribes less sun until noon, more water in the second, feeding a little vinegar on the cloth to discipline the skin. The boy with the shade learns a new setting and is proud that his hand remembers. At noon, a new sound. Not wing, not reed, not rope, a small tooth on wood. You feel it more than hear it, a testing tap like rain trying out a roof. Then another from the other side, and the boats hum back as if amused by the attention. The men do not point or shout. They tilt their heads and listen like fishermen reading the ripples. Rats are rumors with bodies. They come when cities do, and the city is here now, its maps drawn in scent. One noses the seam by your heel where the pitch left a hair's breadth of uncommitted space. The boy rises without hurry, slides a thin slat under the runners, and the tiny architect reconsiders its survey. Not today, say the boats. Perhaps tonight, say the rats, and the conversation pauses on a comma. Eggs do not announce themselves. They simply arrive, are placed, are believed in by the creatures that place them, and then they wait for heat to do what heat does best: teach time to hatch. You feel the lesson not as pain. Pain is too coarse a word, but as density, a crowding in the thin territories of eyelid and lip corner. The first proof is a motion so slight it could be a trick of the skin, then another that removes doubt. You would laugh at the smallness of it if laughing were available. Instead, your eyes water, which the air treats as generosity. The men adjust feeding to keep you comprehensive to the experience. The spoon continues its ministry. The water arrives in a silver trickle that deceives you into gratitude. A drop of vinegar kisses a raw ribbon on your forearm, and you sing an involuntary note that satisfies the ledger's need for data. They are careful with the mouth, no more sweetness than necessary now, lest the tongue blister into mutiny. The cloth comes more often dabbed at angles that push back the colonies attempting to lay permanent claim to the corners of your face. They are not saving you. They are keeping the borders in dispute. Afternoon stretches into a kind of parliament. Delegations arrive from places you do not see: ants with legal briefs, wasps with lances, flies with appetites that have achieved consensus. Your skin, once map, and now marketplace, negotiates without you. The honey is being spent. Where it thins, your sweat rises to pay in smaller coin. Where it beads, a queue forms. Each visitor argues its case. Each is accepted. The state you remember, the one with fingers and decisions, and a sword you were stupidly proud to lift once, is under new management. Rats return at twilight with different proposals. One tests the bolthead, decides bronze is a language it doesn't speak, and moves to the rope, gnawing experimentally, as if asking the story to end sooner. The boy answers with a hiss and a thrown pebble that doesn't need to hit to be believed. The rats withdraw for now, but you have learned something discouraging about will. Yours is a shrill instrument, theirs is percussion. They keep time with the dark. Your mind tries to run where your body cannot. It sprints down roads of memory that smell like bread and riverstone, trips, staggers, crawls back with something clenched in its teeth. Your mother's voice, a field after rain, the rough blessing of an older soldier who taught you to oil a pred, blade in silence. You hold the something for a breath, and then it dissolves, absorbed into the air like every other offering the day has taken. Bargaining begins without your permission. If I endure this hour, then... But there is no then, the boats recognize. There is only the hour, extended, detailed, itemized. By the third evening, the hum acquires rests and trills. You can separate, if you try, the light complaint of a wing caught by a hair, the contented buzz of a mouth that has found what it was promised, the sharper note of a bite preferred by a species that has waited its rightful turn. You realize with a scholar's clarity that you are listening to an ecosystem learning to pronounce you. The pronunciation varies by sun angle and patience. It is flawless by dusk. The boy with the shade yawns for the first time within your field of vision, an intimacy that startles you with its normalcy. He is bored, which means you are alive. The man with the ledger draws a line not down, but across, and taps the quill on his teeth while he reads the day in reverse. A priest in the crowd offers a prayer in the mathematical tone of someone telling the heavens how to do their work. Somewhere behind him, a girl laughs at something unrelated to you. You bless her for it without meaning to. When night comes, it brings cool and complicity. The flies drowse, the gnats thin out, the wasps turn mean, then go elsewhere. The rats discuss logistics in the dark like quartermasters. Your skin no longer feels like you. It feels like a place with borders you cannot patrol and laws you did not write. A moth blunders into your lower lip and departs in embarrassment, dusting you with a soft astonishment that makes you want to weep. You don't. The boats allow many things. Tears they consume before you can prove them. By the fourth morning, the riverbank remembers you before the sun does. Footpaths that were guesses become grooves. gossip hardens into timetables. The first faces aren't the loudest, they are the dependable ones. Bakers with flour on their wrists, water sellers with cups that ring like bells, a fishmonger who keeps glancing at his eels as if they might learn from you how to hold still. They take their places the way parishioners do, not for sport but for witness. Behind them wedge the curious, then the dutiful, then the ones who pretend they were only passing by. A woman ties her child's scarf and lifts the child high to see. A boy on a barrel practices an expression he believes is manly. Somewhere a vendor recites prices as if nothing in the world were being decided here. A corps of guards keeps the eager from testing the wood with their own hands. They are not here to protect you. They are here to preserve clarity. Distance is part of the lesson. So is repetition. Your breath must be seen to be believed and believed to be useful. The boy with the shade checks his square of dyed cloth, as if it were a flag signaling wind to distant ships. The man with the ledger licks his finger, turns to a fresh page, and draws 2 boxes in the margin, one for intake, one for mood. Your body will fill both. Priests arrive in twos, like parentheses, robes swaying, beards catching dust. Their task is to speak for the heavens without contradicting the officials who speak for the earth. They sort scripture the way herbalists sort, leave some bitter, some sweet, a few poisonous if steeped too long. One stands near your feet and begins a homily about disorder and the long work of cleansing. He does not look at you. He looks at the crowd and watches shoulders relax into the relief of a story that explains pain. Another priest, older with the patience of salt, says less and means more. He gives the moment shape and then gets out of the way. A magistrate climbs a low riser with steps so small they can't be accused of haste. He reads a few lines in a voice that understands its own echo. Words like harmony and realm and insult move through the air with the same confidence as flies. He does not shout. Shouting would imply doubt. He states. The crowd absorbs. At the back, a hawker calls plum cakes with cheerful blasphemy. The world insists upon its errands, even while a man is being turned into policy. The hum resumes at your face, now a chorus with descant layers any musician could score. At each stutter of your breath there's a small intake from the people watching a tide that synchronizes without rehearsal. You do not think of it as power, but that is what it is, the ability to organize strangers with nothing but the slow metronome of staying alive. Officials depend on it. When your chest rises, lists are made. When it falls, coins change pockets. When it stalls half a second too long, the boy with the shade narrows light until your lungs remember their duty. A clerk with a smaller ledger, there is always a smaller ledger, moves through the crowd, noting what cannot be entered into law, murmurs weeping. The number of times someone blesses themselves, the precise moment a boy buries his face in a shoulder. Deterrence must be measured, or it decays into hope. The clerk writes in columns labeled day heat, turnout, unrest. Where a tanner mutters that this is ugly work, a check. Where a soldier stares too warmly at your name, when it is spoken, a mark. Where a child laughs at a fly and is hushed, a note for the priest, add fear. You are not spared theology. A younger cleric, eager as a hound, preaches purity like a drum. He names insects as instruments of justice, your sweat as confession, the boats as a parable in timber. Someone near the front sobs with the relief of certainty. Another laughs at the wrong moment and earns a look from a captain that says laughter is a privilege the calendar no longer offers. In the lull between sermons, 2 old men trade versions of the punishment as they heard it from their fathers, sanding facts to fit memory until the story sits comfortably in the mind's chair. Meanwhile, the craft continues under the ritual like water under ice. Spoon breath, water dab. Reed stir. A fresh band of honey is drawn across your brow and wrists with the easy focus of a scribe ruling a page. The physician nods at the color of your gums and prescribes a pause longer than yesterday. He will beg sooner if he is kept, he says to no one in particular, and the sentence is entered into practice without touching parchment. The boy with the shade learns the difference between shade that comforts and shade that lulls. He will make a fine official if he survives his tenderness. Ambassadors come with faces that are really notebooks. They stand a little apart and watch not you but the watching of you. For them the lesson is not pain, it is order. How many guards per 100 citizens? How quickly does a priest arrive when a rumor sparks? How many children are permitted to see? They will write home about roads and granaries, and also about this, the empire's ability to choreograph horror without losing the beat. It frightens them correctly. By midday, heat transforms piety into pragmatism. People rearrange into islands of shade. Sellers pass cups that sweat. An old woman ties a ribbon over her nose without embarrassment. Even disgust becomes a commodity. Perfumed cloths trade at a premium. Muttered prayers are exchanged for gossip with sharper edges. A boy copies the gesture of the spoon in the air. A girl copies the way your eyes fix on a point beyond the crowd and uses it to practice not crying. They are learning the posture of spectatorship their rulers require. The first real begging escapes you not as a word but as a sequence of sounds you have never heard your throat make. It surprises even you, and that is saying something. The crowd changes temperature by a degree you can feel. 10 people move closer by half a step and are stopped by guards' hands raised like shutters. A priest turns your begging into a verse before the echo dies, fastening the moment to meaning. The magistrate's assistant writes a single word effective. In the afternoon, a wind flips the shade cloth and carries a ribbon of smell through the assembly that tilts heads toward home. A few leave. More arrive to replace them as if a rota operates on an instinct older than calendars. You become part of the city's timekeeping. The bell marks prayer, your breath marks thesis. Between the two, a market writes its ledgers and lives its compromises, and a realm convinces itself that mercy would be a failure of infrastructure. When evening kneels, the light makes simple things, holy the dust, the cloth, the quiet pride in the boy's hand as he hits the same angle twice running. The crowd thins to the faithful and the faithless who cannot look away. Someone sings under their breath not to comfort you but to give the moment walls. The ledger closes with a small, satisfied flap. Your chest lifts once more. The officials do not clap. They are not amateurs, but the day approves of itself in the only language it understands: the numbers of those who came, the quiet of those who left, and the certainty that tomorrow the path to this place will be a little deeper. You begin to write without hands. The first letter is to the wood. You promise it you will be light if it will be loose. You offer to breathe smaller to ration ribs, if the seam will forget you by the width of a whisper. The wood is a good clerk. It hears records, does not answer. You try another letter to the boy with the shade. You think the words into the angle of his cloth. Please hold the afternoon at that precise slope where pain grows drowsy but pride stays awake. He cannot read thought. He reads skin. He trims light by habit, not petition. Time unthreads. Minutes stop being birds that pass overhead and become fish that slip through your fingers. You try to catch one by counting because numbers wear harness better than prayers. 1 to 60 back to 1. 1 to 100 back to a breath. Even numbers only, then odd. Then every seventh swallowed like a secret. The flies respect the ritual enough to let you finish a set before rewriting your mouth with their signatures. You realize you are teaching yourself to beg. In a grammar, the body trusts not please but pattern, not mercy but math. Another letter forms this one to the man with the ledger. In it you offer revisions to the story that brought you here. You will say the king struck the blow, that your hand was an echo. You will say you dreamed the boast and mistook it for memory. You will say anything that moves the chair back under the sovereign and nails it there forever. The letter feels convincing. You picture it slipping from your head into his book like a leaf finding its page. He turns a line, taps his tooth, and the page remains clean. Your bargain is not with him. It is with a mechanism that refuses individual nouns. Then you write to your mother in sentences made of breath. There is bread and there is hunger that learns to speak politely, and there is a river with boats that never meant harm until men taught them sentences. You compose this as if someone could take it down. You revise it 3 times the way you once revised a joke until it fit a captain's patience. You forget the middle and replace it with a field after rain. You forget the end and replace it with a song about wheat that knows when to bow. The song carries you 10 breaths before the hum plucks you back by the lip and writes its own refrain where your words had been. You try gifts. You offer names you don't quite mean to give. The names come up like old coins dredged from a shallow, shiny under river water, ugly once dry. You put them back. You offer instead the shape of a rumor that would please the right ears. You would hand them your bravado-wrapped, small-tied neat placed where a magistrate could find it without bending. This bargaining feels clever until a fly walks across the hinge of your eye and signs the treaty your mind cannot negotiate. Cleverness is for rooms with chairs. You are in a room with bolts. Begging changes register. It leaves your mouth and learns new doors, the soft hollow at the throat where words once waited, the quiver in the nostril when the reed stirs the dark, the way your tongue presses the palate as if testing a gate that used to open for laughter. You do not say mercy out loud because the word tastes like dust and draws more flies. You say it by obeying swallow when the spoon arrives, hold still when the brush writes, breathe exactly to the count the boy's hand makes in the shade. This too is a letter. Its ink is compliance. Hallucination is a form of correspondence. The priest's homily folds into your father's voice, explaining how to mend tack with cold fingers. The physician's pulse check becomes the old game of matching songs to footsteps on parade. When the reed dips and stirs, you are in a bathhouse you once knew with steam like a veil, and men telling the same story 3 ways for the pleasure of admitting they were all cowards and all brave. You almost smile. The seam punishes that. You learn again that joy has a price in carpentry. A new letter is addressed to the creatures themselves. You tell them you will be the quietest feast they have ever known if they will spare the corners of the eyes, the hinge of the jaw, the cracked geography of the lip. They are excellent civil servants. They process requests in order of arrival. They do not prioritize sentiment. A maggot invents a road where none was planned, and your nation of nerves raises taxes to pay for it. You accept the budget like a citizen too tired to vote. There is a moment, one moment only, when you believe you could be forgiven if the right person saw you as a line item instead of a lesson. You stare at the magistrate's assistant as if sight could drag him into your economy. In your head you speak to him clearly, right enough, right example made. Right, let the man be finished by rope, call it thrift, call it mercy if you must. Call it whatever saves the ledger ink. He scratches something. A guard shifts to block your view. The vote fails. Words start losing furniture. Nouns unbutton themselves and slip away, leaving you with verbs that refuse to sit. Drink, endure, swallow, breathe. You discover the hum likes short imperatives. It climbs inside each one and plays it until the syllable phrase. You trail after them like a child after kites. Once a full sentence arrives intact, I am sorry, and it is so heavy it almost breaks through the floor of your mouth. You cannot support it. It falls back into the dark between the boats and joins the weather there. At dusk, a boy, perhaps the same, perhaps time has split him into several tilts, the shade and your eyes meet. The world funnels into that small, lawful thing, 2 pupils, 1 question. You compose your last letter of the day in it. No words. You only place your breath on the line like a coin. He nods minutely as if accepting payment on behalf of a shop that will not open in this lifetime. The nod is everything you have begged for and nothing you can use. Night sets its seal. The letters will not be delivered. You will write again tomorrow. That is what the boats are for. 17th dawn bleeds into the river like a bruise forgetting its purpose. The air over you is cooler than the nights before, and the hum that used to arrive ahead of sunlight arrives late, sleepy, disorganized as if even appetite has learned your rhythm and grown tired of it. Breath comes in coins now. Small, exact payments you count before you spend. The boy with the shade does not lift his cloth yet. He watches your chest for the cue that used to be reliable, and the weight teaches him something he will not forget, that even a metronome loses faith at the end of a long song. The spoon does not come first today. Water does. The trickle tastes like a memory of wilderness, thin and pious. You swallow slowly a ceremony that requires its own choir. Honey follows in a smear, not a banned calligraphy reduced to initials. The man with the ledger has turned to the last leaf and already penciled the lines intake weather mood audience. Under mood he leaves a quiet space. You are between categories now. A threshold the book acknowledges with a blank. In the dark between the hulls the reed stirs and meets less resistance than yesterday. Heat has eased its grip, or perhaps you have less left to give it. The smell, once a stratigraphy of sweet and sour and iron, thins into something almost clean. Even the men remark on it with a lifted brow. A physician comes and doesn't advise. His hands hover over your wrist, then your throat, then fall back to his sides, as if realizing there is no knob left to turn. He stands near your shoulder a moment longer than is necessary, and leaves without pretending he has earned his fee. Flies circle, but their circles are lazy the way shoppers act when shelves have been picked over. One settles at the corner of your mouth as if out of politeness, not hunger. A wasp draws a ruler's line down your forearm and writes nothing on it. Ants inspect the pebbles under the runners, hold a meeting adjourn. The rats have negotiated a truce with the boy's pebble and honor it. It is not mercy. It is the etiquette of endings. People still come. They have grown used to the path, to the way the guards' faces arrange themselves into the weekday version of solemn. Mothers carry children who will not remember today but will perform the story of it later with gestures they learned from older cousins. The baker with flour wrists has no flour today. He scrubbed them clean for the occasion and looks embarrassed by the redness. Priests arrive with a larger quiet than their words can carry. One kneels not to you or to the boats, but to the logic that built them, and asks his God to accept this logic as if it were piety. Another priest simply stands at the edge and keeps count under his breath, a rosary with numbers instead of beads. A magistrate reads the same phrases, only softer, as if the law itself has caught a cold. Harmony, he says. And someone in the second row nods in gratitude for a word that promises to make crowded lives add up. The clerk with the smaller ledger tallies the present tense into the past, column by column, day 17. Heat moderate, turnout strong, unrest low. He draws a line and writes neat as pride. Order restored. You do not see this, but you feel the sentence tug something in the air the way a fish feels a boat turn. The boy with the shade lifts his square at last and finds a modest angle, enough light to keep you, not enough to burn you into a mistake. His hand trembles for the first time since you met him. He fixes it by making his fingers deliberate, as if building a small bridge between breath and sky. You want to thank him and cannot. He does not expect thanks. He expects closure. A gull passes low. The boats creak as dew loosens yesterday's pitch. The seam at your ribs that bit you on the first morning is kinder now, not because it forgives, but because it has no more to take. You inhale. The inhale is a visitor late to its appointment. You exhale. The exhale lingers in case there is one more sentence. The crowd leans almost imperceptibly, like wheat remembering wind. A child asks a question too softly to be overheard. A mother answers by squeezing a small hand. You bargain one last time without words. Not for life. Not any more. For shape. For an ending that is a period, not an ellipsis. You place the request on the air like a folded paper bird and watch it struggle hover land. The paper is accepted. The priest shuts his mouth mid-syllable. The magistrate lowers the parchment. The man with the ledger does not look up. He only stops writing. The boy with the shade lowers the cloth to a level the sun respects as sacred. When it happens, it doesn't happen to you. It happens to the room. The hum loses its center. The reed stirring finds only air. The boats, tuned to a body's weather, detach from their instrument and become lumber again. Your chest pauses long enough to be mistaken for stillness, and then decides to agree with the mistake. There is no cry. There is an unfussy evacuation of presence, a tidying up you might admire if you were the sort to admire chores done well. Work resumes immediately. The ledger receives its final mark. The magistrate's assistant rolls the parchment and knots it with a thread like a vein learning to rest. The priest closes his book gently, as if to avoid waking anyone. Guards step forward, not roughly, and undo what was done in reverse order: rope, peg, bolt, lid. Light, a large impolite light, falls in, and men position themselves between you and it out of habit. The boy with the shade looks down and finally allows himself the luxury of thinking your name. He will not say it out loud. He will carry it the way a carpenter carries a notch in a trusted tool, a measure he can apply elsewhere when duty asks for angles he doesn't like. Cleaning is a ceremony disguised as labor. Honey is taken off with rags, then the rags are boiled and thrown away in a ditch that knows more secrets than anyone will admit. Pitch is reheated, seams are walked with thumbs, vents are tested with a reed that now smells only of river. The pebbles are raked to different places so ants will need a new map. The boats are re-oiled. Someone says tomorrow, and no one answers because the word sits heavy on the tongue. Your end is filed exactly where it was promised. Scribes will copy the entry into larger books. Ambassadors will report the effect to capitals that pretend not to envy such efficiency. Mothers will add your name to their grammar of warnings for one season, then shorten it to a syllable, then let it evaporate into a gesture the hand makes when a child runs too near a river. Yet the boat's never truly empty. Wood keeps a ledger of its own odors, dents the polish that only skin can make, and men read from it when they think they are checking for splinters. The boy with the shade will dream of angles for a year. The clerk will pause over the line order restored and feel the smallest bruise of honesty. Nothing is ever restored, only rearranged more quietly. The river takes the morning back. The path to this place keeps its fresh groove. Somewhere in the city a captain decides not to tell a story. A soldier decides to speak of his king with fewer adjectives. A child resolves to walk slower past the mint where officials count metal into obedience. The sentence written in sugar has reached its period. The wax that sealed it has cooled. The empire has taught itself again the lesson it likes best, that fear can be scheduled. The wood waits. Heat waits. The hum remembers.